Hello, everyone. I'm Gorilla Monsoon.
And I'm your host, Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Oh, why don't you be serious? You're not the host, Brain.
Well, I should be.
Chris DiFrancesco is the host.
Chris DiFrancesco?
Yes, that's correct. I didn't stutter.
Didn't he get whacked in an episode of The Sopranos?
Oh, give me a break. He hosts a podcast, Brain.
Who the hell doesn't?
Well, his is about wrestling.
Who the hell's isn't?
He talks about old wrestling.
Wow! What a novel idea.
Oh, give me a break.
Next, you're going to tell me he's got a wrestling-themed name for the show?
Well,
Come on, Monsoon, spit it out.
It's the Hot Tag Wrestling Podcast.
So what?
And it's starting now.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Hot Tag Wrestling Show. Chris DiFrancesco, George Rogers is here. And look, I'm sorry for the delay of this episode. It definitely wasn't for a lack of trying, I'll tell you that much. Just schedules have been crazy. I feel like this is the multiverse movie podcast where I'm just coming up with excuses as to why we didn't record on time. That's a shot at Dean.
Are you proud of that? You proud of that dig?
I'm proud of that dig at Dean. That's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of digging at him. But no, it was just schedule issues, and then not having Wi-Fi for a day and a half. Thank you, Xfinity. Tremendous.
That sounds like a sarcastic thank you.
Oh, just huge amount of respect for everybody involved at that wonderful establishment.
Are you being paid by them? What the hell is that?
If I was being paid by them, we wouldn't be doing this. That's for sure.
Yes, we would.
So look, we're finally here. Excited to bring you guys WCW Great American Bash from 1996. And I put WCW in this month because I figured it makes sense based on what's been on television the last 4 weeks now. George and I have not had a chance to watch the final episode 4 of Who Killed WCW. However, we did watch episodes 1 through 3. We talked about episodes 1 and 2. We are here, I guess, to kick things off a little bit and talk about episode 3 and what we got out of that. What we didn't really learn anything new, but maybe things were just told in a different way. Like George said in Gorilla, it was basically the Vince Russo blame game that didn't involve blame from Vince Russo.
He took zero responsibility for anything. Like he defended every choice that he made. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm glad you're sticking to your guns, but dude, you never should have been holding the fucking pen.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I do have to blame. I mean, look, I blame WCW executives, one, for letting him have almost complete control.
Brad Siegel was a little wishy-washy in this episode.
Yeah, he
was. And even Bischoff mentioned that when his reactions to it. He's like, my friends are bad with Brad Siegel and all that. He said in like the first 2 episodes, this guy remembered everything. But when it came to Vince Russo, all of a sudden he couldn't remember anything. Like he had no memory of anything.
I thought it was real embarrassing and real telling when Brad Siegel on that show outright just said, look, I hate wrestling. I had no idea what I was doing. Like that told me right then and there, like clearly everything that Bischoff has said for years kind of really came true, where he's like, no, everybody above me wanted this to die and did whatever they could to do that. And maybe Brad Siegel was wishy-washy because maybe he had been told or maybe heard for the grapevine, like, look, if we put Russo in charge here, this might actually be the end. So,
or he was afraid of any sort of backlash if he actually comes out and says like this or the other. Maybe he's, if it comes out as that, maybe he gets blamed as like the scapegoat. Maybe he doesn't want that. But either way, if you had a hand in it, I mean, at this point now, 23 years later, just man up and own up to it.
I agree. And, but it was just, look, I understand everything that went on. And I can kind of just be like, well, okay, it was just bad creative, even with David Arquette, because, I've read a lot and who knows if it's 100% true, but, Bischoff said it might be true that, putting the strap on David Arquette for, what was it, like a week? Actually, they made a lot of money off of doing that to promote Ready to Rumble and they were paid like $5 million or something like that
Right.
to put the title on him for a week. So look, I get that. I mean, we've seen ridiculous champions in WWF, right? I mean, we've seen it. It's just a thing. The world title's a prop, and it is what it is.
Mhm.
But what really gave me the whole, my bullshit meter kind of went off. That alarm started making a lot of noise was when Russo tried to sell me on the idea and the decision to put the world title on him. That is where I kind of drew the line and said, dude, why don't you just admit in no world is that a smart decision and a good booking decision to put the title on you?
Yeah.
Why is that smart? And I feel like Kevin Nash was kind of right. He wanted the limelight for himself and he took advantage of it.
Yeah. He saw an opportunity to basically paint himself as this company's version of Vince McMahon. But it's like, dude, no one's buying it because Vince McMahon, for all of his faults, at least looks the part that he could be in the ring. Dude's jacked for days. Vince works out like a freak. We know this. Russo looks like you or me.
Yeah.
Probably closer to me, just all doughy and awful. But it's and a lot of what he said just it sounded like bullshit, whether it was or not. The way he says things and the way it was articulated, I'm like, you sound like you're deflecting.
Yeah.
Or trying to take credit for something else. Because here was another thing I remember is when he said that after they told him to go home for like those 3 weeks or whatever, he said, "Oh, like it was, and then I happened to turn on Raw and Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn show up." He's like, "There's no doubt in my mind that they left because they sent me home." It's like, no, they left because Kevin Sullivan was booking, and Benoit is like, no. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Yeah. And then Guerrero, Saturn, and Malenko went with Benoit in solidarity. Mm-hmm. That's already known, Vince. Right. So I don't know what you're trying to revise there, but we all know that situation. It's been said to death.
With the whole Vince Russo situation, obviously we can strap blame to Turner executives for even remotely bringing in. Look, I understand, and look, they explained it very well. And regardless of my thoughts on Russo, they did explain it very well. I mean, even Kevin Nash, even DDP said, "Whoa, we're getting the guy that was partially responsible for the Attitude Era." And on the surface, George, it made a whole lot of sense why it was a big deal that somebody at that time in 1999, where WWF was hotter than hell itself, dude, like you're getting the guy who was quote unquote responsible for it to kind of now rejuvenize WCW.
Like if you're looking on paper or you're getting this communication, this memo, and you're a guy in the locker room, you're like, oh, the head writer for WWE or WWF is gonna come over to WCW and he's gonna sign with us. You're sitting looking like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But then, like, once you realize the truth of it, whereas Vince Russo, yes, he was the head writer and he was head of creative, had a massive filter named Vince McMahon over him.
Yep.
Because as we all saw, can you imagine if there was somebody looking over him in WCW? Just to kind of filter out, like the fucking pinata on a pole match, Viagra on a pole match with Shane Douglas and Billy Kidman. It was like that shit wouldn't have happened.
you know what it kind of reminds me of, and I really hate doing this because I feel like I'm picking on Tony Khan and AEW. I mean, it's like Vince Russo got to WCW and was said, "Do whatever you want," and that's what he did. He put on the air on television things that he personally liked, what he wanted to see. And I feel like, that's what we get over, in the other brand today is an owner who can do whatever he wants and will put on TV whatever he wants, despite what may be good or not good for the company, profitable or not. If it tickles him, he's going to put it on television.
Yeah.
And look, in 1999, 2000, dude, man, looking back, it's really hard. Who killed WCW? Well, we know who killed WCW. It's a fact. It was the merger. The fact of the matter is, Turner Networks did not want wrestling on their programming, and nobody can sit here and say Bischoff killed it, Russo killed it, the finger poke of doom, this or that. The fact that your network didn't want you is what is going to kill you.
Yeah.
You could be as profitable as you want. If who's paying the bill for you to be on TV doesn't want you anymore, you're going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of it, because obviously if they were given time and able to restart, they could still be around today. Who knows if they were, WWF has had some restarts. The New Generation era was a bad time, a hard restart.
That was a rough time for everybody involved.
The beginning of the
Especially
PG era
was
really hard. I mean, obviously, we just got out of one of the worst eras in WWE.
Like 2008 to 2000, or like 2018 to 2021,
22
or 22.
Yeah,
what the fuck? Like,
so, like, companies have to go through that. And USA Network and, Fox, or before that, who had SmackDown before Fox? Was it USA?
Was it Sci-Fi? The Sci-Fi?
Whoever it was, yeah. They stuck through it and said, just keep getting yourself out of it.
Or like CW. I know CW had it had it at start, or when it was UPN.
Right. And I think Eric Bischoff said, like, look, if they wanted to keep us and let us go through our growing pains, we'd be able to restart. They had a good roster.
Mm-hmm.
But it just didn't happen. Like Eric Bischoff said, since day one, nobody wanted us, and the first chance they had to get rid of it, they did.
Like the only person who wanted WCW was Ted Turner.
Yeah.
And once the power got taken away from him, that was it. That was it. That was the end of the story.
Game, set, match, man.
I mean, I know they talked about Bash at the Beach, and we've talked about Bash at the Beach like ends of fucking time. It's always going to be a talking point.
Yep.
And and Russo's like, oh, like the whole idea was to, the whole plan was to get the belt on Booker. If it was, then why all the rigmarole to get through it? It just seemed like, and then even Bischoff says, he's like we said, we had that meeting in that little like mobile camper thing about what was going on, and then like the second I left, something happened, and that's not what happened, and like it wasn't the final result that we got.
Do you think this 4-part series put a real even bigger black eye on Hulk Hogan?
I don't think so, actually. I mean,
nothing that we didn't already know.
Nothing came to light about Hogan that we didn't already know.
Okay,
that's the thing. I will say, looking back, and Russo was talking about like the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood, and like it's all like and it's like, this actually happened. It was just young guys fighting for a spot. Well, here's where you fucked up with that. The Millionaires Club were all faces.
Correct.
Nobody wanted to see them lose because you're ahead of your New Blood. You had Jeff Jarrett and like Scott, like we love Scott Steiner now, and they pulled the gun on him way too late in WCW, for my opinion. But like, there were people like nobody wanted to see Jeff Jarrett go over Hulk Hogan. Nobody wanted to see Jeff Jarrett go over Sting or DDP. Nobody gave a shit.
Right.
So it's like that was never going to work anyway, just because of how you portrayed everybody. Now, if you had the Millionaires Club as faces or as heels, and they were like, you have a backstage segment with like Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio, and you have Kevin Nash say something like, who's going to want to watch you guys? You guys aren't even worth the TV time that you get, shit like that. Real like heel tactics. Then that storyline may have had a little more life to it.
Right.
But nobody cared. Like Billy Kidman versus Hulk Hogan. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Yeah.
We love Billy Kidman and we love Hulk Hogan, but nobody fucking thought that was a good idea.
No, that's just it wasn't going to work.
And then Russo went on the whole thing about how he got hurt in the ring with Goldberg. And it's like, I legitimately believe Goldberg was trying to hurt me. And then it cuts to Goldberg. He goes, if I was trying to hurt him, he'd be under the ground right now.
Of course.
Which I 1,000% believe.
Correct.
Like, if somebody doesn't like you in the business, you're going to find out. Like when
Correct.
Brock was
Yeah.
throwing fucking haymakers at Braun Strowman for
Strowman.
going too fast. Like that's what that would have happened. Then the whole thing with him getting speared through the cage and getting the concussion. He's like, I told him just work me to the entrance. And I told you this and growing. I'll tell these people here. The way that cage was set up, and you guys know if you're watching, you know what an aerial shot of like the wrestling arena looks like, and now the way the outside ring area goes around and then kind of cuts in and then goes up the ramp. There was no way in hell Goldberg was going to be able to spear him through the cage that would have got him to the entrance ramp. So
yeah,
sorry, Vince, I'm not buying that one.
My last thing I want to ask you regarding the series, where are you all this time later on Bret Hart and Goldberg, that whole ending ordeal? Because look, I got to give it to Goldberg in a way. And look, I can't stand Bret Hart as much as the next guy. I mean, he's in my top 10 of all time favorite wrestlers for certain reasons. But I mean, he is by far, and I mean by far, the most bitter human ever associated with pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
He just lives in a perpetual state of miserableness. I mean, Goldberg told him the kick was coming. He didn't hurt him on purpose when Bret admits, look out for the kick. He said, look out for the kick. So isn't it Bret's job to look for the kick?
I feel like there's blame. There's definitely blame on both parties. Mm-hmm. I mean, in this scenario, knowing that he said watch for the kick does kind of paint Goldberg in a little bit of a better light because he was being careful with it.
Right.
However, at the same aspect, because Goldberg is kind of green around the gills, he didn't pull back the foot enough to where, and he also didn't really state, hey, watch for the kick to the head. He said watch for the kick. So that could be coming midsection or anything.
That's true. That's a good point.
But that's what happens when you try to call spots in the ring and you're not good at it. Bret can call a spot and you'll buy it all day. Goldberg calling a spot, you're like, I got to figure this out.
But why can't Bret, who is a technician's technician, like if you look it up in the dictionary under technician, his picture is going to be there. Mm-hmm. Why can't he just look at it as this was just a unfortunate, horrible accident?
Because Bret's better that his career ended before it wanted to. His career basically did not end on his terms.
Right.
That's why he can't let it go.
Yeah,
and that's my opinion on it. But I mean, anybody would be the same way. If my Amazon career got cut short due to circumstances out of my control, I'd be better about it forever. Mm-hmm. So it's
all right. Well, look, that's Who Killed WCW. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a little bit of a hit piece on certain people. I thought it was a kind of a hit piece a little bit on Hulk Hogan. I thought it was somewhat of a hit piece on Eric Bischoff. I still don't understand why Eric Bischoff gets so much hate so many years later. I mean, I understand that maybe he let go of, caring about the entire roster because he was so fixated with the NWO. But man, when you're handed the reins of a wrestling company that's lost tens of millions of dollars, and you're just handed 2 hours on Monday night for Monday Nitro to compete with a juggernaut, and you do what you did with basically nobody helping you for the most part, dealing with those maniacs on that roster and the creative control that that had to be given out to compete. I think the guy did everything that he possibly could being a wrestling guy.
I will say, when it comes to Russo, his reasoning for going to WCW was a little flimsy at best, because he's like, oh, like they just added SmackDown. Now I'm expected to write 2 shows, so I'm going to WCW. Well,
that's not what he said in his book.
How many shows were they running in 1999? 2. They had Nitro and Thunder. Plus they had Saturday Night.
Yeah.
They were still doing Saturday Night at the time. Mm-hmm. So it's like you said you left because you didn't like having to write 2 shows and you were away from your family all the time.
Right.
But you're going to WCW where you're going to do that too. You're writing 2 shows.
Right.
So dude, you went because the money was good and you want to be with your family. You don't
Right.
have to pay them, oh, like I'm expected to write 2 shows. Yeah. Interesting how that works when you work for a company that produces television. You have to write multiple shows. Who the fuck would have thought? I don't know how Triple H is even doing it right now.
All right, so that's it for Who Killed WCW. George, you have any thoughts on what's going on in the current product right now? Raw's had a couple straight weeks now of really good ratings. They saved, CM Punk is a Raw superstar. They said, nope, don't go on your show. Wait to go to Chicago for SmackDown. Ended up being a really good show. NXT is doing well ratings wise. What's your thoughts on what's been going on the last couple weeks on the current product?
Chris, if there's one thing you know about me, and you know a lot about me,
Yeah.
I'm not a man who has a strong faith.
Mhm.
But over the last couple weeks or so, I kind of found I kind of found something to believe in.
Hmm.
And I believe in Joe Hendry.
Oh God.
I've been holding on to that for a week.
Jeez.
Tell me, so this man, he's a TNA wrestler, and he wrestled over in England. He's Scottish, so he's got a history with like Drew McIntyre when McIntyre was wrestling over in Scotland. He comes to TNA, and he's got this this whole gimmick, this whole like crafted, like homegrown gimmick, and he comes over to NXT, and his appearance on NXT blows social media out of the water. Like WWE social media. It is like the most viewed video of 2024.
It's wild.
Like the dude's over his command. Like when I sent you a text, you're like, I don't know who that is.
I don't know who he was. I didn't know.
but now you know who he is.
I know who he is now. Yeah.
And I haven't seen much of him in ring. And we're in this era now of instant gratification with our wrestling fans because we can't wait for anything to build. Right. We need it now, and we don't want to wait, and you're going to fuck everything up. But like Joe Hendry comes into like the Battle Royal to determine the number 1 contender for the NXT championship. And he cuts a real dick promo on the way to the ring. And then he's the first one eliminated. Everyone's like, oh, this is how you treat him. He came over and then he gets eliminated first.
Yep.
Yeah, and then what did he do after? He had a backstage segment with Shawn Michaels. Shawn fucking Michaels.
Right.
Yeah, who else is having that on NXT? Oh, nobody, right? Yeah, thanks. And the man that eliminated him for the Battle Royal, Frankie Kazarian, who also made his NXT debut, they're feuding in TNA, so it makes sense.
Right.
So stop with the instant gratification. Joe Hendry's not going to come in and immediately get the title shot. Sorry, that's not how it works. And even if he's not going to beat Trick Williams for the NXT title, because their chances are they're not going to have somebody from an outside promotion win their titles.
Right.
Because then they would probably feel would diminish their belts if that happens. Some other companies will do that. WWE, chances are, will not.
Right.
I mean, it would make for great storytelling. You get a good crossover appeal. Maybe people watch TNA. Maybe people watch NXT. You get that. But probably not something's going to happen. But you got to let it simmer. You got to let things simmer. You got to let them build.
Yeah.
And speaking of simmer and build, for weeks, months even, we've been getting the tease for Uncle Howdy and the Wyatt Six. Wow, did you know I was getting that? Did you just type that in?
That was going to be my next topic, so I had it ready.
Look at you.
Yeah, man.
We're in sync today.
We are.
It's going to mess up the world tour.
You said I know a lot about you, so I knew you were going to get to it.
There you go. You knew. And
now get off my lap.
Hey, get on my lap.
Get right.
But the Wyatt Six made their debut last Monday.
Yeah, Chad Gable died.
Chad Gable died. That man got murdered.
He did.
But then came back the next week and won a triple threat against Braun Strowman and Bronson Reed.
That's right. He's one of few people who've died on television and returned.
Yeah. The first one was the Big Show.
Yeah, Paul White fell off of a fucking roof and he showed up the same night and then got raped by a Yeti. So that was one night.
What a day.
What a day. What a day at the office.
Yeah, but at least the Braves won the World Series that night, so they had something to celebrate. They even
correct.
say that in the Rise and Fall of WCW. I think Shivani said it. He's like, yeah, they were looking on the monitor. We saw the Braves won the World Series, so we had something to celebrate.
So yeah, I was gonna ask you, man, like I do want to bring up the whole setup, which I thought was pure cinema. I thought it was tremendous. It's something that you've never seen before. It's never been anything.
Not to this extent.
One continuous shot.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so cool. And look, we've been wrestling fans, you and I, for 30 years, so we're cynical when it comes to this freaking business.
Yeah.
As fans, right?
You're ready. Like, as soon as something bad happens, you're ready to like turn on the dime. Like, I'm canceling Hot Tag. I'm done with all this. It's like, but Chris, Xavier Woods just pinned Ludwig Kaiser. That's not a reason to lose your mind.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
You're like, why isn't he beating Paige?
But like I would.
You're welcome.
We all seen that on the internet. God. So I thought it was just so stinking cool, man. And the one thing, of course, I noticed. Did you notice that Bo almost tripped and fell over a wire? Did you notice that at all?
Yeah. He recovered. He recovered well, though.
Dude, that was Shockmaster almost, like 30 years later. I was like, oh no, it's gonna happen. But they come out. The whole setup was so perfect. And then, of course, last week that everything went great there. And then, for those kids at home that saw last week's episode on Raw with the whole VHS tape from Nikki Cross.
I love that Michael Cole had to explain what a VHS tape was.
What a VHS tape was.
He goes out there to go to production shop, see if we can find a VHS player. And I got mad. I'm like, they're called VCRs, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, it was nothing. Most things, like when people say I feel old, I don't feel that way ever. But when Michael Cole on live television grabbed a VHS cassette tape and had to verbally explain what they are on the air, I said, wow, for the first time in my life, I feel aged that this man on live television had to explain what a VHS was.
I'm not going to point out that the label on the VHS tape was upside down.
Yeah, that was rough.
But at the same time, I'm like, but that's what I expect from this group.
Yeah,
it's not going to be all neatly,
yep.
With lines and everything's handwritten with like Total Recall and like True Beverly Hills. No, it's going to be a crudely taped tape.
And then, dude, what a vignette from Bo Dallas. Holy moly, was that? I mean, as of today, it's his best work ever. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was, again, God, I'm so happy. Sometimes you don't realize how shitty of a creator the guy is until he's gone. And Vince McMahon, this would have been dead on arrival if Vince was controlling this.
Yeah,
it would have been a Mountain Dew promo.
They would have showed up and they would have got pinned by fucking R-Truth in 3 minutes. Yep. No slight to the great R-Truth, but he's no main eventer, so unfortunately that's how that is.
Yeah,
but like this is given time, like, and we didn't get and we only got like Nikki Cross on Raw. Just coming out in it with the tape, and they haven't even said these people's names yet, but we know who they are.
Yeah,
so it's and I'll go to that Whataburger picture that everyone's losing their mind about, like, oh, kayfabe said, like, how can you do this?
Well, I'm not happy with it.
But here's my defense of that. If you don't know that these 5 people are in this group, that just looks like a fan taking a picture with wrestlers. But because for months, every dirt sheet son of a bitch has been leaking and saying who it is and what's going to come. Kayfabe didn't exist because we already knew who was behind these masks.
Yeah.
So you can't really say like the mystique is done. The mystique was given away months ago when they said Bo Dallas was going to be in this group with Eric Rowan, Dexter Lumis, Joe Gacy, and Nikki Cross.
Right.
So it's like there is no mystique because everybody reported it. Mm-hmm. Now, had this been kept sort of under wraps and we didn't know, then we could be like, oh, well, that's just someone taking a picture with like their favorite wrestlers out of Whataburger.
So what bothers it doesn't bother it because I just expect it. It doesn't matter, but it bothered me because, and I listened to one of the Undertaker's new podcast, one of his shows over the last couple weeks, and he said, and it's something that I wish would have been done with the Wyatt Six. Undertaker said, I understand kayfabe's dead, but he's like, wouldn't it be amazing if somebody or a group could come around and completely turn back the clock, delete all your social media, don't even, live the gimmick outside of the walls. Just do he goes, don't do what I did. I took it to the extreme. He goes, I just didn't have a life at all. But, get off of social media for 6 months, 6 to 8 months. And if you're caught somewhere, make sure you're kind of partially, mostly in gimmick. And, let's do something that is has not been seen by maybe a more casual wrestling fan in quite some time, where, wow, these dudes are living this gimmick. And I thought the Wyatt Six would have been that perfect opportunity to, turn back the clock a little bit and say, you know what, kayfabe can still be a thing if it's done right. So that's why immediately after Raw, I see this photo on Twitter. I'm like, damn it. Like, already.
So the Undertaker said that. The Undertaker, the same guy who was answering calls on the hotline at pay-per-views in the early 90s.
Oh, trust me, he talked about that. He goes,
I don't want to hear this man talk about kayfabe because I remembered him doing that, and I'm like,
he said he wanted to punch Vince McMahon in the face for asking him to do that. But he's like, look, the boss told me what to do and I had to do it. But he's like, I get that.
But I will say this about kayfabe before we move on to the main topic. Kayfabe, it's not outrightly dead. It just exists on another platform or like another medium now.
Yeah.
Now the goal for kayfabe is to work the IWC. And it works because I'll tell you this. Drew McIntyre just re-signed a new contract. Chad Gable just re-signed a new contract.
Yep.
So last week, not like before the murder or after the murder, like Chad Gable had that match against Braun Strowman and lost. And people went online and they're like, oh, this man re-signed a new contract just to get squashed by Strowman. It's like, all right. So kayfabe does exist because now we have the inside knowledge.
Yeah.
And then Drew McIntyre gets a new contract. It's like, oh, but then he's getting screwed all the time. Is this why this guy signed a new contract? Yeah, you're getting worked. That's how that's going now.
Yep.
Because now they know that we're all in the loop because social media, everything comes out. We know who's signing contracts. We know who's leaving, this, that, and the other. So now they're just going to use that to their advantage on another spectrum. So like Drew McIntyre quits on Monday and they're like, oh, this guy, it's like, he's not going to quit. He just re-signed a new contract and then shows up on SmackDown. It beats the holy piss out of CM Punk in Chicago.
Yeah. Yep. And look, I understand what you're saying. It does make total sense. It's just, I guess when I saw the debut of the Wyatt Six, I thought, this is awesome. Like, let's keep this as mysterious as humanly possible. Even though I get it, the scumbags and the dirt sheets have been leaking this shit for months. But look, if that's the only thing we see, then that's great. Do you have any expectations of additional members? Like, do you see you don't see Alexa Bliss coming back into this?
I could see her coming back into it just because it was teased on Raw on Monday.
Yes.
When Gable walked in from the from the parking lot, he walked past the production truck that had R-Truth's face on it, and then it had Alexa Bliss. But it wasn't Queen Alexa Bliss or like the goddess. It was Funhouse Alexa Bliss.
Yes.
So if she does come in, that'll probably be the one thing. But I'm here for the ride. I want to see what they're going to do. And I like how after their debut, people online are like, oh, this is like, it's like I want to because the cool thing is to hate everything that WWE does. That's the cool thing now.
Yeah.
You have to hate it. Even if it's something good, you have to find some fault with it. So immediately it's turning into, oh, well, they're just exploiting Bray Wyatt. And then this past Raw, when Uncle Howdy's interviewing Bo Dallas and he goes, are you exploiting your brother's legacy? I'm like, yeah, they read Twitter.
Yeah. I just love when they work the dirt sheet scum.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite. Okay. So there you go, everyone. That's the current stuff that's been going on with pro wrestling, whether it's the Who Killed WCW documentary, and then lately everything in the current product. So let's get to our topic this evening. WCW Great American Bash from 1996. This occurred on June 16th, which we were basically right around the time we were supposed to record this episode. But, that's neither here nor there. 28 years ago, dude, 1996, 28 years ago. And look, this was right before this took place in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore Arena, 9,000 people. The tagline of this pay-per-view was World Championship Wrestling turns up the heat. If you guys ever see the poster, you see Mean Gene Okerlund holding a plate full of raw meat that says WCW, and Bobby the Brain Heenan almost getting set on fire by a grill, which is great. This was the 10th annual Great American Bash. It was the 5th bash that was held in the same Baltimore arena. 1988, 89, 90, and 91 also held the Great American Bash. So at this time, June 1996, George, this is pre-NWO by a month, by a few weeks, rather.
Yeah.
And, by the makes of this card, thank God that the NWO was showing up in less than a month, because it was still really tough to get through a WCW pay-per-view pre-NWO in this time. I mean, Eric Bischoff's taken over here. Nitro's in full swing. They were still sometimes beating Raw. They were going back and forth, but you can just tell the WCW just didn't have their feet under them yet at this point in time. What was your thoughts, going back 28 years and watching this pay-per-view?
It's a rough watch.
It is.
Like, that mid-90s wrestling landscape was very formulaic, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Like, everything was just kind of by the numbers. Like, there wasn't any shock value. It was, it was matches.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you watched the pay-per-view the month before, the Slamboree of 96, and that was awful. So, we're leading into this NWO takeover. God, it was needed. It was so much needed for this company. So thank God this is the final pay-per-view before literally the whole world changed in pro wrestling, which is really cool to even think about. So you have to look about this as we're here in the Great American Bash. Right after Slamboree, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash made their debuts on WCW. Obviously, they were Razor Ramon, Diesel in the WWF. And dude, making the jump to WCW was it. Like, that was the scuttlebutt that if you were, 10 years old, like, George and I, George was like 11 or 12. Like 11. This was what you talked about with your friends. Like, dude, did you see Diesel and Razor on Nitro? Like, it was so cool to put myself back in that headspace where I was back then. So, when you went back to watch this pay-per-view, was it still cool to you to be like, man, this is right in the beginning of when it all changed and when it all happened?
Like, it still feels special. That's the thing. Like,
That's the thing. Yeah.
It still feels special. It still feels real because no one had pulled back the curtain yet and exposed everything.
Yeah. Good point.
I mean, it was if you subscribe to some jerk-off's newsletter.
Right.
But we were kids. We definitely didn't.
I mean, it was crazy. If you subscribed to the newsletter, you would have learned that you were about to see Mabel in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, it's mind blowing. I guess they had to make the change because too many people got a copy of that. Of that issue. So man, it's what could have been.
By the way, did you hear that Meltzer raised prices for his Observer? Probably because he's losing so many subscribers.
He needs more money to have loose paper laying around his office.
Yeah, for sure.
Or to hire a fucking cleaning lady. Jesus Christ.
Hall debuted 8 days after Slamboree, And then, of course, Nash followed soon thereafter. They took over the program and they ran all over WCW. Of course, they're building to the big match at the Bash at the Beach, which is a month later. But the two have been appearing every week leading up to this pay-per-view as well. If you look at the Wrestling Observer at the time, Meltzer did call this show one of the best WCW has ever produced. I wholeheartedly disagree up until that point.
What the
Yeah.
People listen to him, and it's confusing to me.
It is, yes. So we're going to get into it. Like
That's
I said,
a fucking cult. That's a goddamn cult.
it is.
Not the people that listen to Cornette. The people who pay money
Right.
to listen to this grifter talk out of his ass.
I agree.
I can listen to The Experience for free on YouTube.
I know. Again, here we go. WCW, the Great American Bash, June 16th, 1996, inside the Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. 9,000 people in attendance. The opening match here is between two babyface tag teams. The Steiner Brothers versus Fire and Ice, which was Scott Flash Norton and Ice Train. This match went about 10 and a half minutes. I thought it was fun. What did you think?
It was a very hard-hitting match with two guys who were very experienced and two guys, no.
They beat the piss out of each other.
That Frankensteiner at the end.
Oh, that was tough.
That was the worst Hurricane Rana Frankensteiner I have ever seen in my life.
That was terrifying.
And I'm watching the match, and you can tell that like Ice Train, and I don't mean to be mean, but he just kind of didn't have any ring psychology.
I agree.
Like the man just stands there waiting for spots to happen. It's like, dude, do something, do anything.
I agree. Look, these are two teams that would face off with each other multiple times in the next upcoming months here. And it was one of the better tag team rivalries in WCW, which is funny. Again, these are two babyface tag teams. But regardless of that awful Frankensteiner, dude, Scott Steiner was at his absolute roided peak form here.
What a king.
Yeah, he was just incredibly athletic. Rick Steiner did his part and picked up the win for the team. Norton and Ice Train, dude, I thought they worked actually decently well together.
They worked well as a tag team, but they were just like they didn't have anybody. Yeah. They were just they're what they were. Right, Scott Norton would get better.
Yeah.
Ice Train kind of left the business for a minute and then came back as M.I. Smooth in 1999.
Right. Look at that fun fact of the night. I do think that this was a fun way to start the show. It was high impact, a very popular tag team.
They didn't have Johnny B. Bad to open the show, so they had to find something else.
I thought I was watching the wrong show, and I realized Johnny B. Bad didn't open. I'm like, am I on the right thing?
Yeah, he was over in the other company.
I know.
Wild Man.
That's right. Mean Gene makes his first appearance of the night, joined by Jimmy Hart and the almighty Taskmaster. He'll be taking on Chris Benoit tonight in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Sullivan says that isn't about anybody but him and Benoit. He says that he knows Benoit is a member of the Four Horsemen, but that won't save him tonight. Sullivan says that just like he took out Brian Pillman, he will be taking out Chris Benoit tonight. Well,
Sullivan, he admitted to it.
Yeah, Sullivan did end up eventually taking out Chris Benoit.
Long-term storytelling.
We
don't know.
The next match is an absolute barn burner. WCW United States title match. Conan
should have been the main event.
Damn right. Anywhere in the world, baby. Conan versus El Gato. Conan gets the win after a whole 6 minutes, man. Dude, sure, we'll go with that. I mean, it was all right. Yeah. It was all right. Whatever. The most important thing is what happened after this match. Gene is joined by the man they call Sting for a promo. Sting says that Gene is trying to stir him up and that tonight he is going to show Regal what it's like to be in WCW. He makes fun of the way people in England drink tea. and that he is from America, and tonight he's going to know that, whatever that means. Sting says that he knows Regal is a fantastic wrestler, but tonight he is going to straighten out who the best of the two wrestlers are tonight. Now, I'm dumbing that down a little bit, y'all.
Happy Pride Month, Stinger.
But Stinger is, he's in 2024, my man's ruffling some feathers. And I don't mean that as a pun. Maybe I do. But he's ruffling some feathers with that promo. And so, I mean, Mean Gene got him started.
Yeah.
So we all know.
Yeah, he's got his little finger in the air when he's sipping his tea. Maybe he kind of swings. It's like, oh,
and then,
on.
I mean, we saw the little wrist bend by Mean Gene, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if anybody at Peacock gave a shit about the Great American Bash 1996, they might want to cut that out. I enjoy it, but for the purposes of talking about it.
Nah, Peacock don't give a shit. They're gonna air it.
Yeah,
they
Peacock
don't care.
No.
They're like we're a company that makes money. Do whatever you want.
What they could have done is edit out this next match, because I don't know what this was,
Christ.
but hey, look,
bad is what it was.
Hey, George, relax. This is one of the best WCW pay-per-views ever produced.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Diamond Dallas Page versus Marcus Alexander Bagwell. This match went 10 minutes. Diamond Dallas Page gets the win. Look, I don't know. It had back and forth a little bit. Page was on a roll at this time. He was playing a really good heel character, kind of hokey. I hated the whole like cigar thing and the weird, leather he was wearing, or, the silk, whatever he was that was wearing at the time. Hitting that diamond cutter though was still awesome to see. And
yes,
that was awesome. Bagwell was always just the same Bagwell, even right here. Obviously, from a charisma perspective, he was a far cry from what he would become a couple, years later. But, what was your thoughts on this?
I mean, DDP was he was a little rough around the edges, but
yeah,
he was coming into his own. Buff Bagwell, whatever.
I agree.
Hollywood, or American Male's Buff Bagwell
Male
does nothing for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Neither did anything he did.
We go backstage. Mean Gene is again with Jimmy Hart and the Giant, who is at this time the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Jimmy Hart says that everyone is worried about beating the Giant, but the only person not worried at all is the Giant. And then the Giant starts talking, says that Luger will find out tonight why he is the champion. And Luger is sadly mistaken if he thinks he can beat him. He says he's beaten Hogan, Savage, and Sting, and that Luger is next on the list. And then he says he will be leaving tonight with the title that he came in with. May I just say, all things considered, George, that was a decent promo by Paul Wyatt.
It's a shame that it was all downhill from there.
It was. I mean, literally. I mean, off of a building.
Yeah.
Later on. So, I mean,
no, that happened already.
That was before. That happened already.
Yeah.
Right. Dude, that was a good promo.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was bad at all.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he played his part. I think he talked maybe a little bit too much, but it didn't matter because I mean, he got the point across. I mean, this is 1996, Paul Wyatt. So unfortunately, the benefit of hindsight, we know what's to come with him.
Yeah.
So, but we look at this, he was actually menacing.
Yeah.
And gave a promo that he looked like he was unbeatable.
Yeah. Next match here is my favorite match of the entire night. WCW Cruiserweight title match. Dean Malenko coming in as the champion versus Rey Mysterio. Mike Tenay joined the booth here because, nobody else on that panel probably even knew who Rey Mysterio or Dean Malenko were, but
definitely not Dusty.
Definitely not Dusty. He just kept saying Junior. He had no idea that his name was Rey Mysterio. This match went 17 minutes and 50 seconds, and bro, I could have watched this for another 17 minutes and 50 seconds. God dang, I just love me some prime Dean Malenko, and this is 21-year-old Rey Mysterio here. What were your thoughts, man? Because I thought this was just one hell. This is the kind of match that set WCW apart from the WWF.
Yes, this was a fucking scene. This was a show stealer is what this was.
Yeah.
100%. And I love Dean Malenko's WCW entrance theme. Holy
Me too.
shit. God, I
Yep.
fucking love it all day.
Yep.
I know you love the Billy Kidman's theme, but I feel about Malenko's theme the way you feel about Billy Kidman's
I also
theme.
love Chris Benoit's theme.
Yes.
Chris Benoit's theme was pretty awesome too.
Oh man,
Nice and simple.
They fucking knew it was just on. But like, it's weird because it's like you got this debuting Rey Mysterio and him and Malenko are going at it like they've been rivals for 5 years.
I know. It was just so freaking awesome.
It was clean. It was crisp.
Yep.
I mean, that's a main event anywhere else. That's a legit main event anywhere else in the world.
I agree, dude. Like,
and
it
probably
was
should have been
awesome.
a main event for this show.
And like Dean Malenko here is 35 years old. Against a 20.
He looked 55.
He did. He and Arn Anderson probably looked the same age when they were 15. And
Yeah.
like Dean Malenko's 35 here going up against a 21-year-old Rey Mysterio. And just like look the next couple years in that cruiserweight division, you have Dean Malenko having absolute bangers in his late 30s in an era where when you're 36, 37, 38, people are looking at you like, God, when are you out of here?
Yeah.
Unless you're Hulk Hogan, brother. Then then you're just looking on who to damage. Creatively, of course.
Of course.
Respect. But yeah, I look, I don't think it's the best match that these two had together, but that it was still what 4.5. I give this 4.5 stars easily.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We go now backstage. Mean Gene is back with the total package now. Lex Luger. Luger says he is doing the interview out of respect for WCW, but his mind is on the goal tonight. He says the Giant is a force to be reckoned with, but so is the total package. Luger says he takes a lot of pride in all the accomplishments he's had in WCW. He says the Giant thinks he is invincible, but that's when people start to make mistakes. And Luger says that tonight will be another title. He will add another title to his shoulder. A guy not known for good promos. This wasn't bad either.
This put me to sleep.
It did put me to sleep, but it wasn't the worst Luger promo.
He had no passion behind it.
He didn't.
He was very just flat, like he was reading lines off of a piece of paper.
Yeah, which he probably was.
Probably was. What belts did he have? I know he had the tag title. What was the other title he had? It wasn't the U.S. title because that's what Conan had.
Was it the television title?
Maybe.
I have to see. I have to look at that. That's a
Who
good
was
question.
the other half of the tag champs with him? Was it Sting?
It might have been Sting. It had to have been Sting, right?
I would think so.
I would think it was Sting at that time. I'll have to go check that out. That's a good question.
Whilst they're that big, no one should be having 2 belts.
I agree. Also, I'm really excited to talk about this next match. How about you? Big Bubba.
Yeah, I mean,
John Tenta.
What a barn burner.
So, this went 5 minutes and 30 seconds. John Tenta got the win. Whatever. I can't whatever. After it was a hair match, Tenta grabbed the scissors.
Fucking guess.
Yeah. Bubba gets in the ring and cuts his beard. So there you go. How about that? That'll put butts in seats. Gene is backstage with Steve Mongo McMichael and Kevin Green, who are joined by their wives, Deborah McMichael and Terry Green. Mongo says they are coming to get Flair and Anderson tonight. Green grabs the mic and says they are coming hard. That's what she said. And this gold line situation. Randy Savage comes up to Gene and he says they are going to take Flair and Anderson out tonight. Savage says he is in the huddle and this is a winning team tonight.
Kevin Green had so much intensity.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug there, George.
You be nice to Kevin Green.
Next match here, we have Falls Count Anywhere. Chris Benoit versus the Taskmaster. Benoit gets the win after just about 10 minutes. After Benoit hits a huge superplex off the table, he covers Taskmaster to pick up the win. Dude, that was a straight up brawl.
Is it weird that that's how that match ended?
I thought so too. Do you think that was the original plan or were they maybe strapped for time?
Probably strapped for time.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I thought it was like, oh, it's rare for Benoit to have a superplex to finish a match, but
Yeah, and it was like a superplex off of a table that was set
right.
up across top rope. It's like that's no different than a regular
Yeah.
superplex. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what the point was.
Yeah.
It's like when somebody does a submission hold on top of the announce table. It's like,
Right.
does that make it hurt more? I don't understand.
Oh
Like the
man.
only thing I remember about this match, the only thing that really stands out for this match is Dusty screaming that there was a lady in the men's room.
Oh Jesus.
There's a woman in there. There's a woman in the men's room. It's like, thanks.
Appreciate that. After the match, Benoit continues pounding on the Taskmaster as the referees and Jimmy Hart try to pull him off. Arn Anderson runs down to the ring as he is the one to be the voice of reason for Benoit. He turns around and kicks the Taskmaster himself, and both men continue to lay the boots on him. The Dungeon of Doom comes down to the ring, but Benoit and Anderson slide out and walk to the back before the Dungeon of Doom can clear the house there. Gene is backstage now with Woman and Elizabeth, but is soon joined by members of the Four Horsemen. Arn Anderson says that tonight Chris Benoit earned his stripes and will be a member of the Horsemen, version 17. He said now the Horsemen and the Dungeon of Doom are now at war. Boy, that'll make me tune in.
Oh man, what a fucking battle.
Flair
Lord.
takes the mic and says that McMichael and Green are doomed tonight. Bobby Heenan is last to talk, and he mentions that he isn't scared going into tonight. He has all the confidence in the world that his team can get the job done.
I love that he kept reaffirming that he wasn't scared, but he was clearly scared.
Yes.
Like vintage Heenan. Like only he could give the delivery of I'm not scared, but also visibly look like he's pissing his pants at the same time.
Right.
Also, woman inappropriately touching Gene like the entire time.
I know.
And he's just like, what are you doing?
Kevin Sullivan probably beat her after that. Next match here is my second.
Won't be the worst thing that's happened to her.
Yeah, oh God. Edit. Next match here is my second.
We're live,
favorite.
pal.
We're live, pal. It's my second favorite match of the night is Sting versus Lord Steven Regal. And I texted you about this match.
Yeah.
This match got 16 and a half minutes.
I could have watched another 10.
I really could have. And Sting got the win here. Dude, one thing I'm going to say is Regal does not get enough credit for his wrestling chops. No. And what he doesn't get enough credit for is how great that dude sells for his opponent. I love watching me some William Regal when he sells.
Underrated.
Yeah, extremely underrated.
Probably one of the most underrated wrestlers.
I hands down agree. He was a very good technical wrestler. He knew how to stretch guys. Again, he knew how to sell. He knew when to hit certain spots. I also love Sting here. I love the black-haired Sting with that face paint. He had like an edge to him, and I really appreciated that. Was it a masterpiece? No, but I did text George, and I said, you know what? After watching that match, is it wrong for me to say story and all included because they told a credible story? Mm-hmm. The wrestling back and forth, to me, that's a 4 3/4 to a 5-star match.
Yeah, it literally had everything that pro wrestling should be.
Yeah, I mean, I could have had a couple tope suicidas, or a couple Canadian destroyers.
It
is what
maybe both guys blade visibly on camera.
That would have worked too.
And
that would have been nice.
And just buckets. Maybe a couple, maybe about 40 or 50 2 counts.
Yeah, maybe.
Not enough super kicks in this match, so
not enough.
Minus 5 stars.
That's right. So after this match, there is a commercial for WCW's Bash at the Beach 1996, which of course we know now will probably go down as the most historic pay-per-view in wrestling history. And we'll talk about that pay-per-view in July. Next match here is, this is it. This is one of the 2 main events of the evening. Nature Boy Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus Steve Mongo McMichael and Kevin Green. Obviously we know, Mongo and Kevin Green, both NFL players making their wrestling debuts Mongo was with WCW for a long time after this. Kevin Green did wrestle a few more. But look, this match went just about 21 minutes. Flair and Anderson get the win here, which I was actually surprised about. But this was actually pretty solid. And I'll say this, Mongo got progressively worse as a performer following this match. But I thought Mongo actually did really well during this. I didn't look at this match at Mongo and cringe like I would later on when he would wrestle a little bit more.
He held his own.
He really did.
Yeah.
I thought there was a couple of moments in this match where Kevin Green probably almost killed Arn Anderson or Ric Flair. So huge credit to Flair and Anderson for dealing with that. Huge credit goes to Rick and Arn for getting these guys through a very passable match, dude. Those dudes, they showed. Look, I think Ric Flair is the most overrated talent in the history of wrestling, but he knew always how to make the other guy look good. And he and Arn Anderson put on a teaching clinic on this night. And, golf claps to both of them. What was your thoughts on that match?
It was a lot better than you would think looking at it on paper.
Yeah.
And the big turn at the end.
Yep.
With
Mongo, baby.
Deborah chasing Woman and Elizabeth to the back, only to reemerge with the Halliburton briefcase full of money and a Four Horsemen t-shirt.
Yep. And now we get to another one of the most iconic moments in WCW history. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are out here being interviewed. They throw it to Eric Bischoff. He's at the top of the ramp. He mentions that since May 27th, they've had several interruptions on Nitro. Bischoff says that he knows they are there, and that it is time to give them the answers that they are looking for. Hall and Nash make their way out beside Bischoff, and he tells them that WCW offices say the match between them and WCW is a go. He says it'll be next month at Bash at the Beach. But he asked them if they work for the WWF. He being Bischoff, pronouns, pal. Damn it. Which they both say no. Hall says to forget about the past. They just want to know who their opponents will be. He makes fun of Savage and Hogan before telling Bischoff to get Turner to break out the checkbook. Bischoff turns to Nash, but Hall takes the mic away from him and wants an answer. Bischoff says he will tell them tomorrow on Monday Nitro, but Hall has heard enough, and he hits Bischoff in the stomach. Nash picks him up and jackknife powerbombs him through a table that was at the corner of the stage. Hall and Nash pose on the ramp as people rush to go help Eric Bischoff. May I just say I wish this would have ended the pay-per-view.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This definitely.
But they also made reference to the fact that they had a third guy coming too.
That's right.
The big man, the medium-sized man, our buddy, and our third guy, and then Bischoff wants to know who it is, and he's not gonna tell you who it is.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't call the shots.
Exactly. I just thought, and we all know, man, it was such a huge moment that changed the future of the company forever, man.
This is one of those moments where you weren't sure if it was real or not.
Yeah, and let me just say, people need to also remember what a huge moment this was from an Eric Bischoff standpoint. Mm-hmm. This is way before Mr. McMahon. So let's just be clear here that Eric Bischoff, who was known at this time on television as the vice president of WCW, is out there taking this mega bump, which is a first of its kind. So, again, this is the kind of thing that WCW did, and they were the first. And, when the McMahon... What was before?
Vader attacking Gorilla Monsoon in January of 96.
Yeah, but
do you remember that when Vader when Vader hit him with the Vader bomb? I mean, we knew Gorilla Monsoon was a wrestler, but he was at that time he was the president of WWF.
I guess I mean in terms of like a real true vice owner getting physically involved, because Bischoff was definitely not a worker. Vince at the time, he wasn't a worker, but Gorilla was. But you're right. I remember when Vader attacked Gorilla, and I remember being like, "Holy crap! We're never going to see Vader again."
Yeah, it was more shocking, not because Gorilla Monsoon was the president of WWF, but because Gorilla Monsoon was so much older than Vader. And we're like,
Yeah,
did he just, and he's getting stretched out, and we're like, is Gorilla Monsoon going to be okay?
right.
Did that
Right.
large man hurt him?
God. By the way, I hope the current day of fashion brings back Scott Hall's denim jacket and denim jeans back to fashion.
Chris, for you, I'll do that.
I think Dean would do it for fun.
No, not denim. If it's not shorts or a tank top, he's not doing it.
Nah, what a scumbag. They continue to check on Eric Bischoff, and they bring out the stretcher, so you got a stretcher job here. Tony Schiavone and Dusty are speechless as Tony leaves the broadcast booth to tend to Bischoff as we get to the main event of the evening. WCW World Heavyweight title match here. The Giant comes in as the incumbent champion versus Lex Luger. The Giant gets the win and to retain the world title at just over 9 minutes after a choke slam. I thought it was a pretty standard Giant match.
Yeah.
And Luger was on the defensive for most of the match. The crowd did go bonkers when he signaled for the torture rack. I did write that down, that the crowd woke up at that point.
Because at that point, we hadn't really seen him do the torch rack on anybody that big.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it was a huge moment.
Yeah, and, Luger's incredibly over at this time. He's going to be part of that huge main event at Bash at the Beach a month later. The Giants dominant at this time, and he went through literally every challenger that he faced in WCW. Obviously, this wasn't a classic. This wasn't even like really good, but I do think it did its job in putting the Giant over as an unstoppable champion again.
Yeah.
So I will say I felt during this whole run here with the Giant, I think WCW did a really good job booking him to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the booking was done properly.
I agree.
It was good. It worked, and it kind of covered up his weaknesses to a point. It gave him short matches. He's not there doing 20-minute bangers.
Yeah.
Not that they would be anyway.
Right.
But and they always made sure that the people were working underneath for him, so that way he could always look more dominant. Something that wasn't going to last much longer after he's getting pinned by everybody under the goddamn sun.
Mm-hmm.
But
I will say, so after going through this pay-per-view with you, I do think it was a much better pay-per-view than I originally thought. Like, as I'm going through it all, I'm like, you know what? It had 3 really good matches on it. And that's pretty good. It had, let me see. I mean, maybe 4. I thought the Steiners and Fire and Ice was a good opener. Sting and Regal, Mysterio, Malenko. I did like the Benoit match decently, except for the finish. And I liked Flair and Anderson versus Green and Mongo. And I just didn't really care about the main event, but that's 4 really good matches on the card.
I mean, the pay-per-view is not a snoozer.
It's not.
It's memorable for Nash powerbombing Bischoff.
And that too. Also, yeah.
When in theory, it should be for Rey Mysterio's debut,
right?
And Mongo joining the Horsemen.
Yes,
and Benoit too. Benoit and Mongo joining the Horsemen. It's the Horsemen reforming,
right
in front of our eyes.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, a lot of things happened at this pay-per-view.
Yeah.
But Nash powerbombing Bischoff is the one that overshadows everything.
Agreed. That's the most notable part of this whole show. So out of 10, man, what are you giving the show?
I'll give it a 6.
Okay.
Like, the matches I liked were good, but the bad ones were bad.
I agree. I mean, I'm at a 7, which is right around what you would probably say. I just feel like if I have 4 matches on this card that I like, I kind of have to be in that 7 range. But I can absolutely look at this and be like, I could see a 6 for sure. But I don't know. Maybe up until this moment, we're going to have to go back and watch other pay-per-views prior to this one. But maybe up until this moment, it was a very good WCW pay-per-view. What I thought
I did not like Dusty on commentary.
I hate Dusty on commentary.
As much I love Dusty for like what he does backstage, for what he did backstage, and like being a writer and that. But like, dude, calling matches is not that's not you.
It's not. No, he can't tell a story.
No, he's just screaming.
Correct. All right, so next week. By the way, everybody, that wraps up the Great American Bash 1996. Next week, we are going to be covering King of the Ring from 2001. I kind of want to let everybody know what happened on that evening. So here we go. So King of the Ring.
Few memorable things.
Decent matches. So this occurred just recently, was the 23rd anniversary of that show on June 24th, 2001. Just to let everybody know what was on this show. Kurt Angle and Christian, Edge and Rhino. The Dudley Boys defeated Spike Dudley and Kane, Edge and Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy against X-Pac, and then, of course, the final two matches, which could be match of the year candidates in 2001. Kurt Angle versus Shane McMahon in a street fight. And then the main event for the WWF Championship, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho. So very excited to watch this show and then review it with you all. Coming up in July, we have Bash at the Beach 1996. An irrelevant show, but we're going to cover it anyway. We're going to talk about our top 5 favorite non-WrestleMania Shawn Michaels matches. In Your House, Canadian Stampede from 1997. One of the most highly regarded pay-per-views in the history of the company, actually. And then we're going to kind of go on like a little bit of a just a regular discussion show. And that's going to be, since we're covering Bash at the Beach, we're going to go a couple weeks later after the debut of the NWO. George and I would actually like to get Dean in here for that conversation and kind of just talk about Hogan and the NWO's immediate impact on the wrestling industry. What the NWO was doing for the industry and for the Monday Night Wars. And then I do want to dive into what it meant for Hulk Hogan to be a heel and pulling it off massively. And, that's things I want to talk about. And then August coming up, it's going to be SummerSlam month with one cool one mixed in between because I love George. August, we're going to have SummerSlam 2002, which I believe is the single greatest pay-per-view of all time. Then we got Hog Wild from 1996. That's a George special right there.
Yeah.
SummerSlam 2005 and then SummerSlam 2006. And then the coup de grace of this whole entire podcast, the show, beginning the very first week of September. I cannot wait. George, how jacked are you for us basically week by week from start to finish reviewing the Monday Night Wars?
I'm fucking hyped.
It's going to be so cool, man.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be great.
There's going to be a lot of fucking just bad episodes of Raw and Nitro.
It's going to be so many nights where my wife's going to come downstairs and see the television and be like, what the hell is this? And I'm going to be like,
oh, good. Steve Dahl versus Tom Zenk. Wonderful.
Who is that guy? Why is he wearing hockey skates on the way to the ring? He's the Goon.
Yeah, what are you, stupid?
Yeah, who did you ever beat?
Yeah.
So this has been the Hot Tag Wrestling Show. Follow us on the Hot Tag Podcast on Instagram. If you guys are on YouTube watching this, like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Thank you to everybody who's subscribing. We really appreciate this. Thank you very much. We hope to be back here the same time next week. Just to remind everybody, there will not be a show unless we record it before. So I'm going to have to decide. I'm not going to say there definitely won't be a show, but I'm going to be traveling from, July 10th through July 18th. So I'm going to be away. So I'm not sure. We're not going to do anything live, but maybe we'll put one in the old bucket that I can just throw up here pre-recorded. So we'll probably do something like that. Maybe that'll be when we do the top 5 matches for Shawn Michaels. We'll pre-record that. And I'll have that, premiering the week that I'm not here. But other than that, thank you guys so very much. This was the Great American Bash from 1996. For George Rogers, I'm Christy Francesco, and we'll catch you all down the road. Have a great rest of your week and weekend. Bye-bye.